Hello everybody, Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today we are continuing our ongoing Godot 3 tutorial series. Today we are covering all things audio, from loading sound effects and music files, to playing sound effects and music files, to special effects and positional audio. You name it, if it's audio related, we will cover it today. Now, quick reminder, for all patrons, there is an ebook in development. You do get preview chapters, and every video I have done has a corresponding chapter available, so if you're interested in a book covering everything we were covering here, do be sure to check out Patreon. Alright, without further ado, let us jump in. Now, in order to get going with audio, obviously we need some audio. First things first though, let's open up our project. So here I've created a new project. Again, as I always do, a root node right there, scene. Let's save our scene. Alright, and we'll do a run, get that out of the way, select our scene, and we are good to go. Now, with all things like using sprites, etc., you need some source raw materials. And today we are going to be using two, belch.wav and soundtrack.ogg. Now, the first one is a WAV file, and both are imported the exact same way. Oops. All right, let's head on back over here. And we just drop the files into our project. Of course, you could also open it, show it in File Manager, and drop it there using your native file system support. And that's all you need to do to import them. The two supported file formats there are WAV, which is a Microsoft format, and OGG Vorbis, which is an open source format. Now, the big difference between them is WAV is a relatively uncompressed format. It's very simple to work with. It's very fast to load. It's great for one-off effects, quick, short effects. The other one is OGG Vorbis. OGG Vorbis is a compressed format like MP3, but open source. Now, OGG Vorbis is better for long-form sound effects because it takes up a lot less space on disk. So if you have dialogues being recorded, you have a soundtrack to play, etc., those you would generally support in OGG format. Now, you'll notice with either of these formats, so for example, I select OGG, and we go over here to import, there are very few settings here. You can loop it, and you can set loop offsets. Loop offsets allow you to have multiple, basically, soundtracks or music files in a single file and jump to a position within them directly. Whereas if we go back to our WAV file, you'll see we have a bunch more options available. We can basically cause it to be compressed down here. We can make it into an 8-bit file. We can turn it into mono as opposed to stereo. We can change the max rate, so we can lower the hertz rates of it, save a little bit of space and a little bit of memory if we don't need the visual or the audio quality or audio fidelity of 44.1 kilohertz. And keep in mind, 44.1 kilohertz is what CD audio is recorded at, so it's generally considered pretty good. Here you can also trim it down, normalize it, and loop it. Loop it is important if you want the sound to play over and over automatically. You can set looping here, but you can also handle this in code, which we will see in a second. And you can also handle if it is compressed or not. Generally, for special effects, you probably do not want to compress them so they can load and play almost instantly. And that is basically it. So now let's take a look at how you actually use audio. And the basics are really, really simple when it comes to Godot. To actually just play a sound effect is a matter of basically just creating one note. So come on over here, we'll create it. So we'll add a new child node. And the child type we are adding is an AudioStreamPlayer. Right there. Now notice there's a 2D and a 3D. We will cover them in a little bit. But for now, we just want this guy right here. So AudioStreamPlayer is the node that will play audio effects. You can have multiple AudioStreamPlayer nodes in your scene, and in fact, you may want to if you have a lot of looping and overlapping effects. And then the next thing you need to do is define a stream for it. Now, stream is the audio source. You can see you can get OGG Vorbis. You can do a random pitch, so basically a raw waveform that you can play around with, or an audio stream sample, which is your WAV file format. Or, much easier, you can literally just drag and drop in. Now, next up, the settings you've got here are volume. Now, volume is confusing because it's in decibels, but basically you can think of decibel range as going -80 is no audio, +0 is full audio. So it's not in a scale that you're probably used to. Now, if we want to automatically play it, we can sit here and say playing on. And if I go back to our audio file, our belch, and we import it and we set it to loop, like so, and do a re-import, now when we do playing, it'll loop over and over and over and over again. Now, I don't want to do that, so let's turn that off. You've also got the option of autoplay. Basically, when the stream player node is created, it can automatically play the stream that is attached to it. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Playing audio is very, very simple, and our soundtrack would have been exactly the same thing, even though behind the scenes it's slightly different. So now when I go ahead and set that to playing, you can hear it playing in the background. like so. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you have it looping and playing, it will play constantly while you're in the editor editing. So you probably want to turn playing on with code just to keep your sanity intact. And we'll also look at that next. Actually, let's look at this from code completely from scratch. So what we're going to do is do everything we just did, creating this audio stream player, including playing, but we're going to do it without an audio stream player. So let's just go ahead and delete that guy. So we've got our node right here, and we're going to attach a script to it. And let's call this dynamic audio. All right, so let's create our script right here. And all we're going to do is when we are ready, we're going to create a player. So audio stream player new. We're going to add it to ourself, self.add child player, like so. And we're going to go ahead and set the stream on it. So player.stream, and we need to load it as a resource, load. So the root directory of our resources will be here. So you can see all the various different options available. So let's go with our belch right there. So we loaded it from file. And finally, let's just go ahead and play it. Very straightforward, very simple. And let's save that up. Go ahead and run it. There you go. So that is how simple it is to do it all dynamically using code, if that's your thing. And coincidentally, you could have just gotten, if you kept this stream player node, you could have gotten a reference to it and just called play, and that will play whatever the currently defined stream is. You can also change streams in code just by basically calling this again and passing in a different stream to use that time. So remember earlier on we had that stream player 2D. Now let's take a look at actually doing positional audio, basic positional audio using it. We're going to revisit this a little bit later with a more complex example. But for now, let us just redo our nodes a bit. So here we're going to detach this script. All right. So node, clear scripts. We're going to add a child to this guy. So that is going to be a sprite. Like so, and to that sprite, we're going to add a child audio stream player 2D, like so. All right, so now this is going to basically, while our sprite moves, the audio stream player attached to it will move as well. Now we got to go through the same settings. So let's go in here and we'll turn on belch for it. Let's put belch back into looping, like so, and re-import it. And I'm back. Okay, so now as we move around, our belching noise will move with it. You've got a couple of options down here for how far to go, your distances, etc. But we're going to ignore that for now. What we're going to do now is go back to our sprite and attach a script to it. And call this sprite pose audio, like so. And now what we're going to do in ready, this first call is not necessary. It's set by default, but if you want to be, just to make sure, this is a setting that can be toggled off. Audio listener enable 2D to true to make sure that you have 2D audio enabled. Again, that is turned on by default, so you shouldn't have to do that. So next we're going to call our audio stream player, and we're going to play our looping sound. And that gets annoying quick, but it does demonstrate this thing nicely. So now we're going to implement our process. And here all we're going to do is basically move our sprite around so you can hear the audio move with it. Position.x is greater than 0 minus self. Oops. It's greater than 0 minus self.texture.get width. So basically, as long as we're still on screen, move local x by -1. Pretty straightforward. And then finally, if we moved off screen, self.position.x equals get viewport.get visible rect.size.x. So we're just going to move over to the other side of the screen, and I'm going to go back and add the colons I always forget to add, like so, and like so. And theoretically, there's no errors there. We should be able to run this example, and now you'll hear it pan. If you're listening to a mono source, you're not going to hear anything. Oh, what just happened there? I had an error, but I wanted to get rid of the sound. Let me see. Get width in base null instance on null reference. Get width. Self.texture.get width. That should be fine. All right, 1 second. Oh, that actually means exactly what it means. When I created my sprite, I forgot to give it any details. Sorry, skipped a step there. So let's get this guy in the world and let's move him so he's somewhat centered in the screen. All right, so here we are, positioned somewhat in the scene, and I actually have a texture attached now, so our code should, in theory, run this time. Sorry, my bad. And here you'll see, as it moves off to the left-hand side, it should be panning off to the left-hand side. And then you will hear the audio now cycle out to the right-hand side of the screen, and then come on through. So that's how easy positional audio is. And let me just shut that down before it gets too annoying. I'm going to turn my volume down a bit too, so you're not getting a double on that one. But that is positional audio in the Godot engine. The 3D actually works almost identically. I'll cover 3D in a bit more detail when I start getting into 3D chapters. But again, it works the same way. You attach it to a spatial node in 3D space, and off it goes, basically. So now let's take a look at the heart of the audio system, and that is the bus system. This is where the advanced part of the audio in Godot comes from. And if you want to create special effects or their ilk, this is where you ultimately will end up doing it. And you can access it via, down here, audio. And this is your bus. Now, bus is a little bit confusing to kind of make sense of immediately. By default, you'll have a bus created for you, default _bus _layout.tres. And what you're basically doing here is nodes are added to this guy, or buses are added, and each bus feeds into the bus potentially to its left. It's basically like chaining special effects together so that you can create more advanced audio output. Now let's look at creating a very simple example. We're going to create a left and right panning node. So I'm going to go here, add bus. You'll see a new bus came up. Let's name our bus right here, left, right. And then what you've got here is you've got three sets of controls. This is your volume. You've got solo, which basically says use only this bus, mute, which mutes the bus, or bypass, which skips it completely. And next up, we're going to go ahead right here and we're going to add an effect to it. And we're going to add a panner effect. Now, what you'll notice down here at the bottom, this is your output. Now, there's always master. Master ultimately feeds out to the speaker. So basically, this says when you're done generating your sound or modifying the sound accordingly, pass it off to master. And this will make sense more so as we add more buses to the chain. So you'll see also when I added an effect, there's a whole bunch of effects you can add to a bus, and you can have multiple effects active at once. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what each one of these does, but we will show you a couple in effect. Now let's head on back over to our node hierarchy and do a little bit of work. First off, I'm going to delete everything here, like so. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and add another audio player back in. And we are going to loop our belching wave file over and over and over until you go mad with rage. Now, the key thing to notice here, though, and this is there for all audio stream players, there's this value here for bus. And you notice by default, it is set to master. Well, if that's the case, then this guy will only ever actually channel to this guy. But you want to pick where to start in the chain. So in this case, I actually want to switch this out to left-right panner. So now it can be actually controlled. And let's go ahead and create a bit of a UI for handling panning. We're going to be adding to this guy over time as we add more complexity, but I'm going to pause out for a second while I go ahead and mock up a UI for all of the stuff we're going to be doing today. It's pretty complicated, but if you already went through the UI script in the past, you've got an idea of everything we're about to deal with. Okay, I'm back. So here's the interface I have created. It's going to show you basically all the stuff we are going to be using. And once again, I covered all this in the GUI chapter earlier on. So if you want more details on how to actually make user interfaces like I just did, do check that video out. I won't be recapping that. But I will point out a couple of things I've done here. First off, we have this slider right here. This is for panning left and right. And I've set the minimum as -1, which is all the way left, and the maximum of +1, which is all the way right. And here we also have a volume container. As I mentioned, volume goes from -80 to 0, 0 being full volume, -80 being no volume in the decibel scale. So I have set those as my range on this slider right here. Okay, first things first, what we're going to do is basically get a list of all of the audio files and populate this checkbox drop down with them. So the option panel here is in the sound container option panel. We're just going to go ahead and add a script to it. And all we are doing is basically extending and populating all of the sound files that are available to us. So first off, we need an array to store the files in, like so. And here in ready, get rid of that. We want to go ahead and basically var player equals get tree. So we're getting a reference to the player at the root of our tree. So get root dot get node AudioStreamPlayer. So we're just getting a handy reference to our player. We're going to use that later on to actually play the default audio that we load. And first, var dir equals directory.new. So we're going to navigate through the directory of our file. So first off, let's open that guy up. So dir.open. And the URL that we want to start is the root of our repository directory. And let's make sure that was okay. And assuming it worked out just fine, dir.list, dir begin, var file equals dir.get next, while file not equal empty, we will print out the file. Won't bother with that. We'll just assume everything works great. If file dot, oh, fine, that's not right. File dot ends with WAV or file dot ends with OGG, it's an audio file, and add it to our array. Pretty straightforward stuff. Basically, we just loop through all of the files, and if they're audio files, let's add it to our file system array. And now that that is done, go to the next file. File equals dir.get next. All right. So now for I in ranges file.size, so let's loop through our array of files. Self.add item files at I. So basically, we are adding all of the different files that we found to the combo box so we can switch between files available. And now that that's done, we're going to do something a little bit dangerous because I don't want to code around it. But basically, we are going to load the first file found. So res :/ plus files at 0. The reason why obviously this is a bit dangerous is if there are no audio files, this code will now kaboom. And you probably don't want that. All right, so that is done. Now what we're going to do is hook up the event on our option here. So we could, let's go back to edit mode. We'll show you that way. So our option button has an event on item selected right here. So when that happens, we're going to connect it to this event right here. And all we are going to do basically is if files.size is greater than 0. So there, I had some safety this time. Var plug. Yeah, let's just copy and paste. Oh, you know what? I never actually used that. Oh, yes, I did. I did it right there. So we're making the same reference. We're getting a copy of our player node and player.stream equals load, and then just load in the new file ID that we've selected from our dropdown. Like so. Okay, in theory, everything should just work right there. Let's go find out if our code works or if I screwed anything up. Now, I've done a lot, so chances are I've screwed something up. Non-existent function size in base. File. Am I pluraling versus not plural? I am. Grr. All right. Files. All right, let's try that again. God damn it. Range is in. Did I do it? Range. I in range files dot size. That sounds right. 1 second. Huh. I keep making stuff up here. Plural versus not plural. All right, let's go back to that, and hopefully that was the last of the typos. Okay. No. God damn it. 1 second. All right. I just resolved this path wrong, so I guess I did it twice. I forgot to take into account my root node named node. So hopefully this is it. Let us hope. Downside of writing code live. And Finally. All right, no error. So you see here we have our sound effect there, and we can now switch it, and I have one more bloody error. All right. What was it this time? Dot size files dots. Let's try one more time. Load it up. Switch it out. Okay. We now have the ability to switch between audio files. We're not currently playing them yet, but we can switch. So now let's move on to actually playing them. So now that we have our audio file going, let's attach a script to our play button. So where did play button go? Button controller right here. All right, play button, and we'll attach a script. Create that. And here, all we are going to do is, all right, first off, so we don't keep doing that player thing, let's create a variable for it. In ready, we will get a reference to said player variable. Player equals get tree dot get root dot get node. Now, of course, I could do this by get parent, get parent, get parent also if I wished. So get node audio stream player. Hopefully no errors done there. So we're just getting a reference to the player when we first load up. And finally, let's hook up our on button press. Funk on. Here, actually, I'll wire it that way. It's 2D, play sound. Button pressed. Connect that. And we have a couple things to do. If get node root node panel container slash vbox container dot loop container dot check box loop. So what we're doing here is basically checking to see if this checkbox right here is checked or not. If it is, we are going to be looping our audio. Now, looping audio, remember earlier on when we imported our audio? So here is belch. We have all of these options. Whereas if we go to the OGGs, we have just loop. Well, unfortunately, between an OGG file format and a WAV file format, the way looping is handled is done slightly different. So we're going to actually handle both mechanisms. Dot pressed equals true. So if that checkbox is pressed after we press the thing, we're going to go ahead and call a function we are about to create ourselves called set loop mode. And set, here, I'll just throw a pass in there for now so that it stops getting mad at me. And func set loop mode stream kind of loop. So this passes in the audio file, and we figure out what kind it is. So if stream is audio stream OGG Vorbis. So basically, if it is an OGG file, we set the looping by going stream.loop equals like so. Otherwise, it's a WAV file, in which case we go. Forgot my colons. I always forget my colons. In the case of a WAV file, we go stream.loop underscore mode equals loop. All right. So unfortunately, again, the two different audio files have a different way of handling loop, and that's why we handle it that way. So now that we've got, if the loop is checked, what we do here is go set loop mode player.stream and 1. Otherwise, set loop mode player.stream 0. And now that we are done all that, let's go ahead and play our sound file. Player.play, like so. All right, let's see if we have a winner here. Let's run this. Belch is selected. Boom, I still have another error. Grr. Of course, a couple of typos here. Put the slash in front of root, and I did pressed instead of press. But basically, that is the line of code we want there. Let me just maximize this so you can see this a bit better. Okay, and now before we do this, because we're set on a looping sound effect in the first place, let's go first turn that back off. So we don't want it to loop automatically. And now we're also going to wire up the stop so we can stop this idiocy almost immediately. So let's head on back to 2D. Stop, and on pressed, here we'll reuse our play button. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but then at least I don't have to write much more code. Literally here we just do player.stop. All right, so in theory, no errors, nice theory, but let's run this. Hopefully it's all working now. There you go. So now we've got belch selected. I can play it. I can stop it. Obviously, it's not there. I can set it to loop and play it. And it's not looping. Oh man, I'm full of the hits tonight. Double equals there. Let's go ahead and run. Okay, so now in theory, I should be able to select our audio file, set it to loop, press play. Why are you not working? Okay, I'm not entirely sure what just happened there. I basically just deleted the WAV file, re-imported it, and now things work properly. So not sure if I encountered a bug or what's up, but now we can actually demonstrate. You come in here, you can now select an audio file up here. So, or we'll go back to our belch, play it. We can now loop it and play it. And we can now stop it. Okay, so now that we have this user interface in mind, hooked up, let's look at hooking up our panner special effect. So basically, on this slider right here, we're going to interface with that effect we added right here. Now, in order for this to work, though, we're going to have this AudioStreamPlayer's bus set up correctly. So come on down here and locate bus, and make sure bus is set to left to right. That means it'll start here and move this way. Now that we've got that hooked up, let us go ahead and wire up the onChange event for this guy. So first we're going to need a new script. Sure. That name is great. All right, so now that we've got that done, select the slider, and we're going to do value changed. So this is as our value changes to our slider, and we're going to implement var pan. So we're going to get our panner equals, and then we use the global audio server get bus effect. So you're going to use that audio server quite a bit when programming with audio effects in Godot. Again, we're going to use it again. Audio server get bus index and so we're basically getting which bus it is by name. So when you pass in the get bus effect, the first value is the index of the bus to work with, and then the second value we'll see in a second. So we're going to get the bus by name, left, right. So that the index name is this guy that we defined right there. And then our second parameter is the bus effect to get. Since we only have one value, we can handily enough use 0 to access it. And let me just try and get a little bit of space back this way. Oh, that's as small as I can go. All right, that's fine. So now that we've got our bus effect defined, we've got a reference to our panner, and we're just going to set its pan value to value. So remember, the slider goes from -1 to +1. So now that we run that, what did I do wrong this time? Audio, server. Sorry, there's a lot of mistakes in this particular tutorial. I'm bumbling my way through code. All right, here we go. So now we can set this guy to looping, play our belching noise, and then pan left and pan right. So that is how easy it is to hook up the special effects on the various different bus channels. Now let's show you how to use the bus for handling volume. Now do keep in mind, you can actually set the volume here on the AudioStreamPlayer right there, so you can handle it that way, or you can handle it via the bus. Now let's wire up our volume control right here. Remember, this guy goes from -80 to 0 because it's controlling the decibels on this guy. And we want to set this guy's value. Oops, I need to set a script first. So let's attach a script to it. Default is fine. Select it again on value change, and setting the volume globally is extremely easy. All we need to do here is go down to our volume change guy and set audio server, it's that guy again. Set bus volume. Now you'll notice you can have multiple buses. In this case, we know we're going to use 0. So the master bus, set that to whatever the value is in our slider. Save that up, head on back over, and we can now see, play our sound. Sorry about the belch, should probably pick something more friendly. But now we can volume down, volume up, volume down, volume up. So that is how easy it is to set the master volume programmatically. Now let's look at a little bit more on the chaining side of the buses here. So we'll go back to our bus. We're going to add one more audio effect. And this one is going to be reverb. And it's actually going to be 2 effects. So we're going to go in here. We're going to call this guy reverb. And we're going to come down here to the add effects. And we are going to set the add effects to chorus, which gives you a choir-like effect, and reverb. Now you'll notice with these things actually selected, if you look in the inspector, you've actually got the settings you can use for it. So reverb simulates being in a room. So you see over here you can set up the room size, the dampening, the spread, dry, wet, blah, blah, blah. Chorus also has its own different set. So if you've got a whole lot of voices in your choir, you can set this really high and get a real big effect, or so on and so forth. So you can do individual settings for each effect you add over here in the inspector window. All right, so we now have another one set up. Now, the important thing here is you want to be able to set up a chain of buses. So we've got this new bus here. Right now, it's going straight to master. So if we use the reverb effect, we'll lose our panning effect. So what we need to do is instead of going to master, we'll go to left to right. And this guy has no ability to go to the right, you'll notice. So the bus order is important. You can only pass yourself into the bus to your left. But we want to create a chain. So basically reverb goes into left-right, which goes into master. So that's why we changed that guy right down there. And now we're going to do a toggle on that checkbox reverb toggle. So head on back over here. This guy right here, we'll grab it. And let's attach a script to him. And of course, you could have put this all in one script. I'm just doing it the lazy way. And then we'll do toggled. All right, so when we toggle this guy, we are going to turn on and off the effect. And that is done. Guess what you use? Yes, audio server. Set bus bypass effect. Like so. Audio server.get bus index of our reverb bus this time. And the value that we're passing in is a yes or no based off of if the button is pressed. So we'll do the opposite. Button pressed. Like so. So if our button is not pressed or pressed accordingly, it will turn it off and on. Go ahead and run this. Button pressed. Button pressed. I did a typo in there somewhere. All right, let's try that again. All right, so there's our sound. Let's loop it. And we can turn reverb on and off. What error did I do this time? Apparently we don't want to set the but. So we want to set bus bypass effect, not but. And let's try one more time. Non-existent set bus bypass effect in audio server. Set bus bypass effects. One of those days. Sorry about this, guys. And we'll run that. Yeah, so no errors on that one. We will loop. We will play our sound. And you can see it. No reverb. And we have an issue. And this is a classic example of why the buses are important. So you notice my AudioStreamPlayer right here, my bus is still set to left to right. So that reverb effect is never being triggered in. So we switch over to use the reverb bus. So now it will be part of the chain. And one more time. And now we run this guy. We can play our sound. No reverb. Reverb. No reverb, reverb. So you can see how you can toggle, you see how the buses work together by passing accordingly along, how you can bypass a bus to basically turn it off in the chain. And that's how reverb is working here, basically. So we're saying, even though we're saying start at the reverb portion of it, we can then turn that one off using bypass it. And if we had a really complicated audio bus going on here, like with 5, 6, 7, 8 more layers, we can bypass ones in the middle by basically just turning them off and on. So if we wanted to turn panning off, we could just bypass this particular bus and it would work. But do keep in mind that you have to set, when the AudioStreamPlayer, you want to set it to the rightmost bus so it gets all of the buses in the chain, and you want to make sure that each bus passes through accordingly. So once again, if I switch this guy to run master, the panning would immediately stop working. So that is how the chaining works, how special effects work. It seems really complicated, but once you get used to it, it's quite simple. Especially if you're not a complete idiot and bumbling your source code just as bad as I am today. All right, so one last example we've got going on, and it's probably just as easy for me to start a new scene. Let's go over to the 2D scene here. And what we shall do here is we're going to go back to showing that audio positioning. So I'm going to go ahead here, create a root node, create a sprite, like so. And we're going to show you kind of how that those different buses can work together on with area-based sound turning on and off. This is actually some pretty cool stuff. So we're going to be using the same bus layout here. So we got our sprite, and I'm going to add a StreamPlayer 2D to our sprite, like so. We're going to set the stream to belch that we all know and love. We're going to make sure that belch is set to loop. It is great. All right, so we will have this guy as playing and looping. Sorry about that while it's going on. Here, let's turn playing off until we absolutely need to turn that back on again. And what we're now going to do is create, so our sprite, we got to actually make it visible in the world. So where'd my icon go? Let's grab him accordingly. Let's move him somewhere in the world like so. And now what we're going to do is set up an area where it can't go through. So go back to your root node, and we go here, and we're going to create an area 2D. So this is an area in our world. Put it right about there. And inside of area 2D, we're going to create a collision shape. So what we're doing basically is defining an audio area. So where's collision? There we go. Like so. We go into hit, create the shape, new circle. Let's edit our circle. Radius is equal to 40. Nah, it's not big enough. 180. There we go. So we got a big area that we're going on. So now that we have our area, come here into the area 2D, and you will notice we have a couple of cool options here. Specifically, if we scroll down, there is audio bus right here, and we can set it to override, and we can give it a bus. So we're passing in, so this guy is going to switch it to the reverb bus when you're within this area. We're going to go back here to our sprite right here, and we're going to make sure, so the bus is set to master by default. So when this goes through, it's going to go from being just this bus, it's going to turn on reverb when we're within that area. And now I think we need to add a little bit of code so that we're moving. I just basically need my code from before. So where did my sprite go? Actually, you know what? I'll just attach it. So that was, where is my sprite? Sprite pose audio. Okay, so we're going to go back to our sprite. We'll attach a script. And we want sprite positional audio. So remember, so load that guy up. Now you'll remember sprite positional audio was pretty straightforward. All it did is it caused our StreamPlayer to start playing, which is nice. And then we just move across the screen. So that's really all the logic from that guy. So now we just need to come up here, project, set our, oh, I think I haven't saved yet. Let's say pose audio demo. Project, set project settings, and we'll go to the run kind, and go here to the open. Open that guy up. Positional audio. All right. and now we're going to go ahead and run this. Here you see. And there we're in our audio radius, and you notice that there's a reverb effect going on. And then now we're out of it, and the reverb effect is off. So that is how powerful those buses can be. You can use it to create dynamic effects that based off of where your player goes. So if you're in a certain room, you can set up an area that goes to one specific bus, and then you get an effect like that. Now, one thing to show you that's completely unrelated, kind of cool, is you can actually, let me see where it was. You can actually come up here to the debug menu and say, turn visible collision shapes on. So what this allows you to do when you're debugging your code is to actually see the areas for the physics shapes you're dealing with. See? So you can tell when it's hitting and the reverb is coming on. So you've got the ability to debug and have it show collision shapes when you are debugging. Very powerful feature. We're going to use that a lot when we get into physics shortly. And that's about it for now. We covered quite a lot today. Unfortunately, it was a little sloppier than I meant. A lot of typos and fat fingering on my behalf. But hopefully, it was illustrative of what the Godot sound functionalities are. We did cover a ton here. Dynamically loading resources, playing audio, positional audio, special effects, bus chaining, dynamically calling the buses, volume control, and then area-based audio overrides of the bus. So we did talk about quite a bit in the last 40 minutes, but again, I apologize for the bumbling code typing. I was pretty off today. But hopefully you figured out what you need to know about audio. We covered just about everything there is to know, except basically 3D positional audio, and hopefully I will get back into that when I cover 3D a bit down the road, but you'll find that the functionality is almost identical to what 2D audio was, so I'm sure you can extrapolate and guess how to make 3D work. Hopefully you guys found that useful. I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.